They say information is power. This is true, but there's also a catch because the best results are informed by data that actually everyone has to be able to see and access. It's about the power of data, but unlocking the power of your data to see how your customers engage with your product and then link all of those insights back to understanding the true down funnel impact of your effort.
Yeah, 100% Peggy. Collaboration is absolutely key when it comes to analytics. You need that buy-in from everyone in a business. But the trick is, how do you get from the data to decisions? That's the key part in all of this.
Well, maybe it can be a frustrating journey. I don't know. You're the hands-on guy, Dee, but it's also an exciting journey. You're going to stay optimistic. That's why we are teaming up actually to explore it because your day job, you're managing director at CMA, but you have a very interesting backstory.
Yeah, that's right. I've been spending the last 3 years now working in mobile marketing. My background has been mainly in data analytics and product management. So I'm very passionate about maximizing the value of that data, particularly when it comes to using the insights to enhance the product. I only wish I had access to, platforms such as Mixpanel early in my career. That would have saved me a huge amount of time. Rather than spending time processing data, waiting for queries to run, I could have used that valuable time to analyze the data and actually turn them into actionable insights.
Well, that's a great point. You didn't want to wait earlier in your career, and we don't want to wait right now either because we have a guest to take us on this journey. She's Amy Hsuan, Senior Vice President of Global Customer, and I love this, People Experience, Global Customer and People Experience at Mixpanel. What a great name. And it's also great to have you. We're very lucky to have you, Amy. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So we're excited to go on this journey with you, but I was interested to read that this is really like baked in to your DNA in a way because your colleagues call you whip smart, analytical, and dedicated. And then I looked in your background and you're working with one nonprofit that's creating opportunities locally for refugees and immigrants to succeed. And they called you out for helping that 100-year-old company, that 100-year-old organization rather, to embrace change. You're breaking down silos everywhere, Amy. What can I say?
Yeah, so my background was in management consulting. Yep, the Boston Consulting Group for a lot of years, and obviously, I worked on the board of the International Refugee Organization based in Boston. And change is constant in our world, right? And it's companies have to adapt, organizations have to adapt. That's probably the only constant truth of any environment, especially in the last few years.
Working together, something that's just really a thread in your career. I just wonder, why is that? Why is it that marketing and product used to be siloed, but now they're also working so much more closely together?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of really important trends that are driving this. For one, the product-led growth mantra, which has been really kind of a big trend in product development over the last few years, has meant that for the most part, your product is one of your primary acquisition channels. And that means that, customers are trying out the product and really, kind of driving adoption before they purchase. So it's really changed the kind of customer journey around, what is a marketing-based acquisition versus what is a product-based acquisition. I think the second key trend that we've really seen really push product and marketing together is that, with more and more data and fewer data silos, you're able to combine data around customer journey in really interesting and powerful ways. And so that gives you more access to be able to really think about the customer journey in a much more seamless fashion. And then lastly, I would say in this macro environment where cash is king and companies are really focused on ROI, being able to maximize every marketing dollar and every product dollar to make sure that you're delivering exactly the right moment at the right time to drive conversion has meant that marketing and product just have to be much more coordinated.
What you wouldn't expect is Mixpanel has also internalized this change, putting your marketing team inside your product team. I wonder if you could maybe sort of shed light on that a bit more, just explain A little bit about that change at a high level.
Yeah, so we made the decision about a year ago to essentially reimagine how our traditional marketing organization should be structured at the company. And it was driven by some of the trends I mentioned, right? For us, for a long time, with the product-led growth motion, marketing had two objectives. One was to drive more and more signups and users in the product. And the second was to drive more and more, prospects or leads to our web page. Our web page is primarily owned by our engineering, product, and design teams because it's such a huge, product activation channel as well. So in order to reduce some of the friction in terms of decision making and kind of really drive singular focus on shared outcomes, we moved our demand generation and product marketing, all these different functions that typically sit in their own marketing function, into the product organization. The other thing we did was we took the field marketing organization, which typically is, that in-person touch point with customers that is really driven by a lot of contacts with the sales organization, into the go-to-market sales organization side by side. So that actually means that we don't have a standalone marketing structure anymore. It's really deeply embedded into product and or sales. And that's kind of changed the way we think about the role of marketing and what it's enabling at the end of the day.
So I have to say, first of all, it's great. You're effectively eating your own dog food here. It is about product and marketing moving together. And that's exactly what you did. Maybe there are some learnings, some surprises even you can share, because it's great to say, oh, we're going to do this. And then you do something on the org chart, but then you really do it and you internalize that. What was that like for you and for Mixpanel?
Part of the interesting aspect of my title is that I also oversee a lot of the organizational design of the company. So I know that part of, every company and organization's objective is to reduce the amount of internal friction it takes to get to decision and execution. And so for us, I think reducing friction so we could move faster, design faster, align outcomes faster, and communicate and collaborate more quickly was a really important outcome for us in this change. The other thing is obviously, joint accountability. And I think in any organization, there's a lot of dependencies that exist, and how different teams work together and have a shared accountability that feels like they're driving towards one goal as one team is also really important from basically an alignment and culture perspective as well. So those are some of the things that we really found to be really important outcomes for us. And it has reduced, for example, I think it's really allowed us to be able to be much more effective in our investments, because we can have a much tighter feedback loop on, what's working and what's not. The product team has fully embraced the fact that a primary objective of our product team is to generate pipeline and revenue for the company. And so that means that we are all singularly aligned on, what are the different levers we have to pull to do that.
Great proof of concept as well, right, Dee? I mean, because if you wanted to say product is marketing, yes, this shows it.
And it really shows the change in the way consumers are discovering new apps and products as well. They're much more receptive to seeing product demos, taking up free trials, and really experiencing the product for themselves. A lot of our prospects have tried Mixpanel for themselves already on the free tier, and they see the value, they see the potential value, and they just need that extra support to get them really going and maximizing the value of the platform. So you do really see that happening. Amy, now that the silos have been removed, how has that integration allowed you to evolve as a company?
One of the more fascinating, I think, evolutions in technology and around kind of these different types of org designs is just how much you can do to really orchestrate that customer journey when you have all of the data and you also really fully understand, what are the internal capabilities of the organization. So, what we've been able to do is really work on trying to orchestrate a really seamless end-to-end customer journey based on different segments and how different segments want to buy and what we see in terms of how they adopt in the product. And it's not just, hey, a customer came to Mixpanel, signed up for the product, got, onboarded and activated and viewed their first report. It's sort of stitching up, the entire like pre-product activation journey as well. So what are all the different sources of research that customer did to understand, what Mixpanel can do? What did they look at to get to our website? Once they got on the website, what did they do before they signed up? And what are the things that they're researching? Those are all ways that we can really begin to understand what drives customers to then sign up and then buy Mixpanel. And it's really being able to look at this really kind of cohesive and comprehensive customer journey. So that's kind of, also changed the way we think about product-led marketing, product-led sales, and we call our sales motion product-led sales as well. And like, what are the order in which, like, we deliver a product touch point versus, when do we come in with a human touch point, and how do we do that much more effectively?
Wow. And if you would unpack all of that, Amy, we'd have a series, we'd have a book. And some great ideas as well. I'm just trying to digest that, the pre-product journey, and all those steps before in the customer journey. So the customer journey is like looking very, very different. It sounds like there's a ton of steps between consideration and, the typical journey stages here.
Well, I think when you look at, mapping out the customer journey and the customer experience, increasingly you're seeing that there's so many different touch points, right? It's in the buying process and the evaluation process is really quite complex because there's so much information that a customer can go and review. There's G2 crowd, there's different review sites, there's word of mouth, there's, in-person kind of conferences and events, and really beginning to understand what's the value of each of those touch points. I think one of the most important things is really understanding, how much of your effort and your investment as a company can be attributed to these different touch points. And it's never just one thing. You really have to be considerate of, like, what are the most short-term things that are really impact, a customer's evaluation of awareness of your product. And what are the longer-term things that kind of generate, brand awareness overall. And those are just different pieces of way we think about, like that overall buying journey just being incredibly complex now. Like, there's many more touch points and many more things that influence a customer and their buying decision than I think there have been previously.
You're working with your clients, essentially also, as you mentioned earlier, to make certain they also get the most out of Mixpanel. So her side, her product, her company's product as well.
Peggy, we've spoken about this a lot in the past, but we often look at the flows, not funnels. We need to really get to the bottom of the behaviors that the customers adopt, going from, the initial app session to that conversion point. And to Amy, to your point, there are lots of different journeys, different ways people, explore the app before they get to that conversion point, whether that's purchasing or signing up. You get some amazing insights, and it's not always fixed by, a new customer engagement journey, added to the onboarding or activation process. It could be changes to the UX of the product. So there's lots of different ways we can activate those insights.
People can come in at any point with any intention and really sort of create their own journey as well. Amy, I'm wondering, because that must also give you some interesting insights into building personas. How does that reflect in Mixpanel, but also maybe how Mixpanel works with its customers?
Interestingly, this year, while we were going through our internal organizational evolution, we've also launched, part of Mixpanel that not only services product analytics to the chief product officer, key product organization as one of our personas, but we also launched marketing analytics, which is now targeted towards the marketing persona. And one of the reasons why we did that is because we heard from our customers that oftentimes, getting to a single source of truth around the data between the head of marketing and the head of product is really challenging. They're looking at somewhat similar metrics from different data sources, and that there's a lot of energy and investment, in just trying to validate, which numbers are correct, like what's actually happening in terms of a funnel or a flow. And so our desire as a product was to kind of bring these two organizations together around a single source of truth. And so for us now with marketing analytics, we have, return on ad spend, attribution, very much more common, ways that marketers look at, whether or not, their investments are working. And then also being able to stitch that to, like I said, the product life cycle as well. And so that has been a very interesting way for us to really think about, how different the personas are between like marketing and product as well.
So what are they looking for? It sounds like it might be a slightly harder sell for the hard-nosed marketer rather than the people who understand the value of product. How does that differ?
When we are selling to the product team tends to be a more technical persona. They like to have lots of different options in terms of how they want to slice and dice the data. They like the precision that Mixpanel brings, and as well as, kind of the powerful flexibility of being able to look at cohorts of, users and how they're behaving and what their retention is like in the product over, very customizable timeframes and things like that. What we find on the marketing side is they actually they really want the simplicity. They're looking at, simpler set of metrics, and increasingly we also have a third persona, which is typically now the head of data at a company, right? And ID, I know you have a background in BI, so you can probably speak to what it's like to sell to a head of data and the things that they care about. It's actually a very different set of things. And especially as we're seeing kind of the evolution and the rise of the modern data stack, how Mixpanel, gets to the data, is able to access the data to perform that analytic layer on top is increasingly sitting in the domain of a data team, that's actually, worked very closely with product and marketing.
We've seen that as well. We have a data analytics team at ConsultMyApp, and we see lots of requests, starting with product analytics as, the area their data teams want to focus on. And it's just a good way to generate data as well about, the user behavior, which ultimately they want to bring into a data warehousing solution further down the line. But it is quite common to see them starting off with a product analytics solution. So it's interesting that it's become a recognized persona.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we definitely see that the head of data can be a very important stakeholder and really weighs in on the decision ultimately, right? Because what the head of data cares about is that the source of truth comes from, their team and one place, and that the connectivity to that source of truth is going to be stable and consistent, and that it reduces actually the time that their team needs to spend on building dashboards. And then, most heads of data have a data science team that are hugely under leveraged in an organization because they are, data scientists that are just creating simple dashboards for the product team or the marketing team. And now with Mixpanel, they can actually go do predictive analytics. They can actually, do much more advanced, much more strategic types of work. And we're seeing that as a big trend as well.
So I've got to say, I'm curious then, because that's just the point, that these are data scientists. They can be doing a lot more than just dashboards. So I have to ask you, what are you seeing when that's unleashed?
Investing in the product roadmap is one of the biggest investments a company is going to make. And knowing, what are the right bets to place is one thing that Mixpanel does. But on the data side of the house, freeing up those really important and expensive resources to actually do work that allows them to be more predictive is big. And I can tell you, even from our own experience at Mixpanel, right, we've been able to do much more with our own data team to build out predictive and analytics about, customers who are about to churn, that you require many more signals than just product signals. Usually there's account signals, there's relationship signals, there's, utilization signals that really come in. That's the power of the data team. They take all kinds of signals and they can create a different type of, predictive analysis that drive really a lot of business impact for companies.
Amy, let's talk about the kind of problems companies want to answer using Mixpanel. What are the biggest challenges organizations want to resolve? What kind of questions and problems are they coming to you with?
Usually there's a larger kind of broader strategic imperative that a company is trying to address when they bring in a tool like Mixpanel. And what usually we see is there are a lot of companies that are kind of pushing along this dimension of, digital transformation, and they're trying to get more innovative. So the large, enterprise companies in the last few years have been increasingly competing with, a lot of the very fast-paced digital natives, and they need to get more data driven, and they need to get more agile, and they need to basically make decisions more quickly, and they need to be able to test and learn, and see what's working, what's not. And so usually that's a kind of broader kind of strategic imperative that a company is operating around, and increasingly we're seeing a lot of these big companies, they want to get more customer centric. I hear that all the time from our customers, which is, we built this first iteration of our product a decade ago, and it was built, with just like us kind of looking at our own selves, trying to, kind of build a product feature. And now we need to be more customer centric. So we need data to be able to do that. And that is kind of also one of the broader challenge. Lastly, I would say more recently, we're seeing companies who are saying, look, we want to digitize our internal operations because, while we have developed, more customer facing kind of, functionality, and we're doing great, we have all these internal digital, like applications now that run our internal teams. That needs to be really efficient. So Mixpanel increasingly is getting deployed into these environments that are supporting kind of these larger strategic initiatives, and also giving customers a chance to like really take a lens on the internal operations as well. And for us, the things that they're solving for with Mixpanel are really around questions of, surfacing as much customer information about how customers are actually using the product. There's always many ways to gather insights into how your customers behave. You can ask them, you can survey them, or you can really just look at, how does the customer use my product? How long are they taking to get from, the beginning of this kind of flow to the end of it to be able to convert and pay? And once they do that, how much are they actually, buying? Like, what's the actual size of that cart? And so that's kind of one thing that we do as a company, kind of, very uniquely, is you can really analyze customer behavior, from how they're actually utilizing your product, or even at the top of funnel, to really understand, like, well, what are the customers doing that are actually driving very high conversion or very highly retained? In terms of like creating new innovations, and kind of driving that culture of like innovation that a lot of these, larger companies and smaller companies are looking for, what we do is we completely reduce the amount of time that a product manager or a marketer spends on trying to get analysis to make a decision. So, at a large company, like Facebook, even some of these larger companies, a lot of the product managers have to submit a request to get some very simple analysis from the data team that can take months to get a return response on, right? So if you can imagine, if you're as a product manager, instead of waiting, what we hear all the time is they just kind of guess. They're like, they use, with all this data, there's still a lot of guessing that happens because it takes too much time to get to like an analysis or some kind of, insight, right? And so that's where Mixpanel comes in as well. We really democratize the ability for product managers and marketers to be able to access data on a daily basis and in pretty much real time without needing to know SQL. If you talk to most product managers, most of them do not use SQL, and they don't really want to learn. So that's where we come in as well, right? We can really open up the talent pool for a lot of companies as well, because we can still get to that data-driven culture without all of the barriers, that really prevent a company from doing that effectively.
Had me thinking about something that was a big deal, like about over a decade ago. It was the whole idea that you should follow your lead user. This was out of MIT and Sloan. It was the idea that you have lead users, they're amazing users, and if you know what they're doing, you can get inspiration for where to take your product. But it stalled because it was like, well, how do I know what my lead users are doing? This is actually opening that up. So that's even more exciting. It's not just necessarily conversions, but also, innovation.
But I do think this is the new normal, to be honest. Like any company that wants to be at the forefront of product development, or wants to be at the forefront of really driving acquisition in their product and adoption in their product, needs to have this level of like granularity and insight into how their customers and users behave. And they need to be able to make really rapid investment decisions that then connect to, other tools in the data stack, right? There's experimentation tools, there's messaging tools, all of this kind of ongoing interaction with the customer and user, but also really knowing what's working and what's not very quickly is part of, I think, the new way of working for a lot of these companies. And I think even now with everything that's happening in terms of technological advancement around the modern data warehouse, it allows you to unlock even more powerful insights because there's many more sources of data available in one place than there used to be. So it used to be that, your product data sat in one tool and your revenue data sat in some other tool or some other place. And like being able to combine all those different pieces of data to really get to a view, it was really challenging. And I think that has really changed what we have access to now in terms of understanding what's working and what's paying off and what's not. Any company that wants to be innovating at that forefront needs to be thinking very specifically about every single tool in their tech stack. And, we're big believers in the best of breed, meaning like if you're a really innovative company, you're going to want to make sure that every tool in your tech stack is the best at what it could possibly do, and that it does, that one thing better than any other tool out there, and that level of advanced capability is going to be necessary for all of the leading leading products in the world.
Yeah, Amy, you touched on a really good point there, that there are just tons of platforms out there claiming that they're essentially a CDP. Everyone's a CDP at the moment, I think. And it's quite difficult to work out what that actually means. The industry jokes about the Frankenstack and, how companies have gone from that to, best of breed. It's interesting that some of these best of breed platforms are now venturing out to other areas, and it's kind of almost going back the other way.
There is a trend, I think, right now, and I think it's driven primarily because of, companies are looking to maximize, their spend and their profits, at the same time that they think they can downshift parts of their tech stack to buy something that, like you just mentioned, like, a CDP that's attached to an existing product that's not very good. They think that that's going to be enough for what they need. I actually think that we're going to see a big kind of whiplash back towards best of breed when companies realize that the kind of service, insights, data, functionality that they need to make really good decisions, and that those decisions that are made poorly are very, very costly. Just takes one bad decision, right? Mixpanel deeply believes that, that customers who want to be the best in their industry and the best at what they do need to have, tech stacks that actually are composed of tools that work really well together, but are really, really excellent in one thing, right? Mixpanel does analytics. That's our core capability. That's our competitive advantage. That's where we double down. Once a company or a tool starts to venture into all of these other side products, guess what happens? They divert their focus. They have a finite amount of resources. They have 5 engineers working on this part of the product, another 10 working over there. And then none of those things are actually become really that functional, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting, Amy, and I agree 100%. That's my view as well. Just stick to what you're good at and focus all your energy on being the best in that area. And we don't want to go back to the Frankenstack situation that we had.
So you're both in agreement and you're both very deeply into data. So you're having a conversation where I am going to turn it around just for a moment, because yes, we agree that the tech stack needs to be best in class. What would it not have to include? What is not necessary for a great tech stack?
That's a really great question. I'd love to hear what Dee has to say about this, being, someone who works with lots of different companies on just this type of question.
I'm going to be slightly biased because I'm going to focus on sort of the more data focused platforms in the stack. So I've played around with a lot of CDPs and reverse ETL platforms, and they do overlap somewhat. I think CDPs, I think it actually makes sense for it to have a reverse ETL functionality within that function set. So I do see the value of reverse ETL tools, but as a standalone platform, maybe that is a potential area that either needs investment in or maybe leave it to the CDPs. Could be controversial.
Now, we couldn't talk about data at all without talking about AI, right? How are you embracing this in your product features at Mixpanel, Amy? I'm just curious if you can elaborate a little on that.
Yeah, so we are embracing kind of AI to enable customers to access their analysis needed using natural language instead of, what typically in any sort of data situation, typically you're trying to, you have to perform some functionality to get to that analysis. You got to set your time frame, set your kind of events that you're looking at. We're trying to make it much more simple for users to get to that by just being able to ask the questions that they're trying to get, resolve, and trying to get the insights even more quickly that way. So yeah, that's one area we're investing in. And we think that that's kind of, candidly going to be like the future of analytics in some way, right? Where you can just ask the question, like which cohort was the highest, conversion cohort in the last 90 days? It's much easier to do that than trying to sort of isolate the kind of different dimensions that go into an analysis like that. So that's one area we're investing in.
That's really interesting, Amy. I mean, I've seen that in other products, and I really think it does help break down those barriers, particularly for the less technical users, being able to, who have really brilliant questions and want to get, those insights, but just don't know exactly what type of charts they need to kind of visualize that and bring that to life. So having that feature really, breaks down those barriers.
We started out talking about collaboration, data and decisions. This is also collaboration, right? Because CMA working together with other partners, including Mixpanel, bringing together a series focused on sustainable growth. That's what we're doing. And that's about joining up measurement, analytics, product engagement. So I'm going to wrap up this episode with a rapid fire round of why sustainable growth is important. You won't answer it, Dee. It's got to be her. We know why you think it's important. But you, Amy, how do you define sustainable growth? What is Mixpanel's role in helping marketers achieve this?
I think sustainable growth is all about knowing what's working and what's not, and understanding what high ROI is going to look like for an organization. And that means that you need to have data and insights to really understand how to act and how to decide. And I believe that, sustainability is all about making sure that the dollars you're spending are going towards the things that actually matter at the end of the day. And that's what every company wants to do in every function, in every domain. And marketers increasingly are being asked to show what works and invest their dollars that are very limited and constrained on things that are actually going to drive growth.
Amy, so mindset or tool set? What's the biggest challenge to achieving sustainable growth?
Ooh, do I have to pick just one?
They're both.
Yeah, I would say that what we typically see is even if companies have the perfect tool set, unless their employees and their teams really know how to use it and they're really incentivized to use it, that you still get sometimes a drop off in adoption, right? Even if you've deployed Mixpanel correctly and there's a ton of insights there, unless your team is really looking at it and using it to make decisions and not taking shortcuts around making just decisions based out of gut or instinct or experience, you're not going to get the full power of, being able to have that analysis at your fingertips. And that's actually a really, really big challenge for a lot of companies. A lot of my biggest customers, one of the biggest, ongoing conversations we have is how do we drive real change in the team to make this part of the way they just run and operate. And ultimately what that comes down to is human behavior and human incentives and rewards and recognition. And how do you make people feel like, that this is kind of expected of them. So ultimately, I think it's a combination of both. I know that's not answering your question directly, but definitely at the end of the day, people have to use tools. And oftentimes that's the bigger, harder challenge to solve because, it's really hard to drive consistency and uniformity in human behavior.
I love that answer. I have to say you are in the perfect place, Amy, because you are in charge of people experience and you understand people. So it's a great, great match. And finally, we agree it's all about taking control of your data, having that access. So what is one small step an organization can take right now to extract more value out of their data?
Well, we are big advocates and believers around ensuring that your analysis is coming from your data warehouse and in like that really kind of like power and central source of truth. And we are currently, for a lot of our customers, encouraging them to really think about their data warehouse strategy or what is your, kind of plan for that. And Mixpanel, one of the big innovations that we've really, invested in the last few months is to make sure that there's a warehouse connection directly to the source of truth, right? That actually removes a lot of the, I think, pain that data teams have around, duplicating data, having them not sync, and having the kind of all different teams looking at data that doesn't match. So that's actually one thing that we've been giving our customers advice around and saying this will actually be the way we believe all teams will access data in the future is through kind of one source of truth.
I'm a data warehousing man, so I fully agree with everything you just said there. I think back to a point I made earlier about data culture. I think that's super important. Just having that buy-in from everyone in the business, all sharing the same behaviors and beliefs when it comes to valuing your data, and really, trying to push the use of data within the organization. It's getting that trust from people. And that's something that the data warehouse brings as well, that trust in data. As soon as you've got that, I think you're onto a winner. And it's much more easy to kind of get, people using Mixpanel and then using the insights to drive action. So yeah, fully aligned there.
Excellent. I knew it. A meeting of the minds here. That's why we brought you both together. Amy, thank you above all for making this completely understandable and above all applicable, because that isn't easy. And you've done that. And thanks for sharing. Thanks for making that possible.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.